Hello and welcome back to the Social Work Race. And I just want you to know I appreciate that you turned up for this show. I think this show is, for me, really unique in that it gives a kind of real time, first-hand experience of what it is to be on the front line. And especially for you all who are students, especially for students, because they're making their way in. You are all making your way in. Hats off to you for choosing this path. This podcast is evolving because I want everybody to just have a conversation about what we are seeing behind the curtain of society. I want us as professionals, when we're doing our assessments, to really have a deep look at who we're dealing with, because I can tell you firsthand that it's easy to tick boxes, especially when you're under pressure, and I'm afraid of missing key things when it comes to our people that we represent, those in need. I'm afraid of missing crucial things because we're under pressure on the front line. So as you listen, I want you to, and I'm going to try and help you to do this as well, to transpose and translate some of what you see into assessments and into the support you can give. That's the point of this whole show. So thanks for turning up, and I hope that this will be real for you. Today, we are looking at child Q. Such a relevant story. Child Q. Now, what I will not do is I will not jump on the wagon of this story where we're talking about racism. It might come up later on, but it's a small part of what I want to deal with. I do not like to play the race card so much. I will talk about race, but I'm not a big fan of playing the race card, because I think that racism is a very intricate and broad topic, and to just throw the word black or minority at something, or it's because they're black, I'm not a big fan of that, being a black man. But it has come up in the story, but today it's not about that. Today I'm going to look at this as I would if I were a social worker involved, if I was a youth offending worker, if I was a police officer, if I was a designated safeguarding lead from school, if I was a contextual safeguarding advisor. I'm going to look at it as a teacher, even the receptionist at the school. I want to look at it through professional eyes. Okay. I'm going to ask some questions about this case, though. Here we go. What is the priority when you suspect that a child is using any illegal substance? What is the priority? What is the most important thing? I want you to answer that question as I'm talking, which would lead us to ask the question, what questions should be asked first? Yeah. Before I go into it, I've asked my two older children, and I've asked this question to young people who are smoking cannabis. Why do people use drugs? And after all the times I've asked that question, the young people eventually get there. They usually say because they're addicted, because it's an escape. Yeah, they actually know the answers. That's interesting, right? I'm going to take a diversion on this topic, and this is so important for our interventions. We're all, if you work in children's services, it's a guarantee that you're going to work with someone who smokes cannabis, a young person, and also maybe their parents. it's a guarantee you're going to work with someone who smokes cannabis. So I want to address this. And I'm going to come back to the fact that young people actually know why young people and adults use drugs, right? But before we get there, let me take this detour. The Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984. And we're going to look at the fact that the young lady was strip searched, right? This story is crazy. For my own personal reasons, this story is crazy, right? But let's look at the need for a strip search. And I'm going to help you understand where this took a real bad turn. Under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, the PACE Act 1984, an intimate search or a physical examination rather than visual should only be carried out by a registered medical practitioner or registered nurse, unless an officer of at least inspector rank considers this not practicable. If that's the case, having a non-medical professional conduct a strip search must only be considered as a, check it, last resort. Children aged 17 and under need to have an appropriate adult. Get it? Let me read it again. Children aged 17 and under need to have an appropriate adult present if they are to be strip searched, except in urgent cases where there is risk of harm, or if a juvenile has specifically stated that they don't want an appropriate adult there. However, this decision must be recorded and signed by an appropriate adult. This is a summary of the guidance, the law, the acts, right? What is the aim of an appropriate adult? The role of an appropriate adult is to safeguard the interests, rights, entitlements and welfare of children and vulnerable people. So it's not just children that have it, anyone who's deemed vulnerable. So people who are diagnosed with mental health challenges. I used to like to use the word mental health challenges because I think we all got that to a degree. But people who are deemed vulnerable, all right, and who are suspected of a criminal offence, by ensuring that they are treated in a fair and just manner and are able to participate effectively. So for most adults who are not deemed vulnerable, they would have a solicitor to protect their rights. In the same way, I want to speak to my solicitor. You hear that in the movies, right? It's real. And here's how the law describes the role. To safeguard, this is what an appropriate adult should be, to safeguard the rights, entitlements and welfare of juveniles and vulnerable persons to whom the provisions of this and any other code of practice may apply. That's the PACE Act, yeah? And to act as an appropriate adult to safeguard the interests of children and young people detained or questioned by police officers. That's the Crime and Disorder Act 98. What can they do? What can appropriate adults do? Well, the PACE Act states that the appropriate adult is expected, amongst other things, to do what? Support and advise and assist. Observe whether the police are acting properly and fairly in respect to rights and entitlements, and to inform an officer of the rank of inspector or above that they need to consider that they are not, to assist them to communicate with the police. For example, sometimes police may ask questions, or their general language used by officers may not be understood by the person in need, and children are people in need. And so the advocate will say, well, and I do this a lot, do you understand what you've just been asked? Do you understand what you are signing? Do you understand the questions? Do you understand why you're here? And if you don't think a child understands, you speak on behalf of the child. That's your job. Why am I bringing this up? It's coming. To assist them to communicate with the police whilst respecting their right to say nothing unless they want to, as set out in the terms of the caution, to help them understand their rights and ensure that those rights are protected and respected. Many police processes cannot take place without an appropriate adult. Appropriate adults are expected to be active participants. They need to be assertive and speak up. This is where I come into it now, because I've worked in the youth justice service and I'm a social worker now. Hearing that a child is using cannabis or smelling cannabis around a child is normal. It's increasingly normal. Probably because it's increasing. It's everywhere. I'm driving on the road, even today I was driving home, and it's just, the smell just come from the car in front into my car. I'm expecting that every day. And that can be in any part of London. So what it is that, with Class B, it's with all young people. I think all teachers, at least in the cities, know of pupils who are using cannabis. Yeah, it's normality. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's normal. And so when we have such a virulent issue, we have to handle it a certain way. We cannot treat everybody as if they are a seasoned criminal in these situations, because we're looking at normalized behavior, normalized addictions. So the first thing that really the school would do is to probably place the child in they probably, if the child is at the gate, they probably wouldn't let the child in, or they might let them in and say, we just want to do a general search, open your bag. They would call the parents. They can call the police and the parents. There is no need for a strip search in this situation. There is no need for the police. Listen to me. There is no need for the police to strip search a child when it comes to Class B, unless they think the child is supplying. And even then, we just read it, they can't do it unless there's an appropriate adult there. I've worked with the police in similar situations. I have never heard of the need of a strip search when it comes to cannabis. Now, you may argue and say, well, how are we going to keep law and order if we don't? Listen, it's not the way forward. I'm going to tell you why. Because remember, I read the report. And the young lady, the teachers noted that they could smell cannabis on or around her. There is no need to strip search a child in this situation. I'm going to tell you why. It was clear. Well, I think there was enough evidence to suggest in the report that the child wasn't really able to speak up, which tells you that they will need an appropriate adult. They didn't really have much of a voice. Why? Because she was on her period and she was probably too embarrassed to say, even whilst taking off her clothes. Now it's getting scary. You can hear the passion in my voice now. This is the next level. This is like third gear now. The police, these are all of these points are my personal observations from my experience, okay? The police at no time, it does not appear that the police ever stopped to reflect on whether what they were doing was appropriate. So then you'd have to ask the question, how well trained were they? If they were going to strip search a child and there was no appropriate adult there. How many times have I been called to the police station or had to assist a young person in court because their parent didn't turn up, or their parent refused to turn up, or their parent was a co-defendant? The police will not interview the young person until they've had an appropriate adult there. And this is daily. And this was 4 police officers for one 15-year-old girl. This is in Hackney. Hackney should know all about this. Any school in Hackney should know. And the police officers, I can't believe for one second that nobody reflected and said, hold on a minute. Where's the appropriate adult? Shocking, but I have to leave that there because they just didn't do it, right? Now, this is where you can understand that, because this is the first time I've ever heard that this will take place with a young person in a school. And at the end of it, they didn't find anything on the young lady. This is why minorities would then say, well, this is because of the color of my skin. Because they're wondering, this is crazy. Why did this need to happen? I've never seen this happen to anyone who's white before. What other reason is there for you to do this to me? What did you suspect so intensely that you had to strip search me because you could smell cannabis? But I'm going to give you the most important thing that everybody missed on that day. Okay? I'm going to give it to you. This is the big one because it tells you how everybody was thinking. Okay? Why? It goes back to the original questions I asked. Why do people use drugs? I've asked 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, why do people take drugs? And they answer the question by saying, because they're trying to escape, because they're addicted. And I then say, why? And they say, I don't know, maybe they were abused. Maybe they're lonely. Social pressure. These are the answers they come up with because it's the question I always ask. And if young people understand that, why can't adults understand that too? You know, when we're doing our assessments and when we hear of incidents and we have to investigate it, you know, the number one thing that if we don't have this one thing, we don't have anything. The question is, are they safe? There it is. Are they safe? Imagine a 15-year-old girl smells of cannabis. Let's say she was using cannabis. The question is, why? And who with? Where did she get it from? Let's say she had it on her. The strip search is not the answer, and it doesn't get us anywhere. They might find a joint on that young lady, and what have they done? They've traumatized this young lady unnecessarily. And not asking the question, why? Because when you say, are you safe? Where did you get it? And why are you taking it? You're more interested in their well-being and safety. But it looks like the school and or the police were focused on justice. And if you have a justice approach as a priority, you create more division. Your judgments are based on stereotypes because you haven't investigated. And you lean more towards punishment. And that's how you run your children away. This is where we get the terms child criminal exploitation. What if that child was being forced to hold on to it for someone? What if their home environment was such that cannabis is the only way out? These are the questions they should have asked first. Had a conversation. Call mum in. Have the police have a sensitive conversation with the child. The first choice was a strip. And well done to whoever, wherever, for shaming that local authority. Now they have to change the way they function, because we can't solve social problems like that by strip searching people. You just embarrass them. Now the trauma can drive you back deeper into your addiction. So our priority as social workers is to make sure that people are safe first, assess the risks, then we could take it from there. Let me know what you think. And after you let me know what you think, take care of yourself.